My name is Erica Hill, and I'm 30 years old. If you ask someone in my family to describe me, they'd probably call me the quiet one, the bookworm, or the disappointment. I've heard it all in hushed conversations behind closed doors or thinly veiled comments at dinner tables. But what they fail to understand is that I never wanted their version of success. I never cared about high heels, high society, or high-rise condos. I only ever wanted peace, and I found it in pages. I live in Brookville, a small but charming city tucked away from the chaos of corporate metropolises. Most people here know each other by name, and the old buildings have character, cracks, and history in every corner. I work as a librarian at the Carroll Public Library, a place that smells like dust and wisdom, where the soft echo of turning pages feels like a lullaby to my soul. I started working there 7 years ago after graduating from Columbia, and to me, it was more than a job. It was home. But to my parents, it was a colossal failure. My mother, Janet, owns one of the most successful real estate firms in the state. She's all tailored blazers, polished nails, and sharp eyes that scan every room like she's measuring its worth. She never approved of my career choice. "You're a Hill," she'd often say. "You were born for boardrooms, not bookshelves." Her words weren't just critiques. They were weapons, laced with disappointment. My father, Thomas, a renowned corporate attorney, was quieter but no less judgmental. His way of showing disapproval was through silence, which sometimes stung more than her words. Then there's my younger sister, Mira. She's everything my parents ever wanted: sleek, ambitious, and dripping in luxury. She runs a boutique that caters to celebrities, and she's married to Jake, the CEO of a growing tech company. They're the golden couple, appearing in lifestyle magazines and society galas, always posting about their perfect life. And somehow, I became the invisible one, the older daughter who took a different path, and therefore a wrong one. But I never let it break me. I chose a quieter life because I wanted something real. And it was during one of those quiet, uneventful days at the library that I met Ryan Carter, the man who would change everything. It was the middle of October when I first saw Ryan Carter. The air in Brookville had begun to shift, summer's warmth giving way to golden leaves and a soft breeze that carried the scent of cinnamon from the nearby bakery. That day, the library's basement had flooded due to a busted pipe. Water seeped through the lower stacks, pooling at the base of the biography section. I was already ankle-deep, trying to save the more delicate books, when I heard heavy footsteps on the creaking stairs. "Plumber," a deep voice called from above. "You, Erica?" I looked up, and there he was. Tall, broad shoulders, work boots splattered with mud. His brown hair was slightly damp from the mist outside, and his sleeves were rolled up, exposing strong forearms that looked like they knew the weight of real labor. He wasn't flashy, but there was something arresting about his quiet presence. "Yes," I replied, pushing a wet strand of hair from my face. "Thanks for coming. It's, bad down here." He stepped forward, surveyed the damage, and gave a single nod. "I've seen worse." Then he got to work without a trace of complaint. I expected him to stay silent. Most repairmen did. But as he worked, he asked casually, "Ever read The Killer Angels? Michael Shira?" I turned, surprised. "It's one of my favorites." He smiled slightly. "Mine too. That scene at Little Round Top gave me goosebumps." It wasn't just that he read. It was the way he talked about it, like the characters were real people, like history lived in his bones. Over the next few days, he returned to finish repairs, and each time, he lingered a little longer near the checkout desk. Once, he left a dog-eared copy of Gates of Fire on my desk with a post-it note. Page 103, my favorite part. That was how it began. A plumber with a paperback. A librarian who thought she had read every type of love story until she started living one. Soon, Ryan became part of my routine. He'd swing by the library between jobs, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with a new book to share. We'd sit in the reading nook and talk for hours about history, life, our favorite authors, and eventually, our fears. I told him about the weight of my mother's expectations. He told me about working long hours, the smell of copper pipes, and how he liked to fix things, not just leaks, but problems people couldn't see. He listened, really listened, and he made me feel like I wasn't a failure, just different, unapologetically myself. One chilly evening, he showed up outside the library after closing with 2 steaming cups of cocoa. "There's this little trail up by Dunhill Park," he said. "I know it's a weekday, but I thought maybe—" I didn't let him finish. I grabbed my coat. By the time we reached the hilltop, the sun was melting into amber, and for the first time in years, I laughed without thinking about who was watching. It was a Sunday evening, one of those family dinners I used to dread but attended out of habit. My mother had requested that we all come together at her estate for a civilized meal. Her words, not mine. The Hill family dining room was a gallery of crystal chandeliers, custom mahogany furniture, and cold air laced with judgment. Every detail, down to the arrangement of the silverware, felt like a performance. I had finally decided it was time to tell them. We were halfway through the first course, some truffle risotto prepared by her private chef, when I cleared my throat and said, "I have something to share." Everyone looked up. My mother paused mid-bite. My father slowly put down his fork. Mira took a sip of her wine with curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "I'm getting married," I said, forcing a steady breath through my lungs. There was silence. Then came the question, sharp and immediate. "To who?" my mother asked. Her tone was less curiosity and more interrogation. "His name is Ryan Carter." Mira leaned forward slightly. "Wait, is he the guy from the library? The one with the boots?" I nodded. "Yes." Janet's expression remained frozen. "What does he do?" "He's a plumber," I replied firmly, holding her gaze. It was like dropping a match in a dry forest. The room didn't explode, but it sizzled with heat. My father let out a quiet, incredulous scoff. Mira blinked in disbelief. And then my mother, never one to suppress her reactions, put her fork down with a quiet clink and leaned back in her chair. "A plumber," she repeated, lips curling slightly. "You're joking." "I'm not," I said, my voice clear. "He's kind, intelligent, and hardworking. I love him." Mira laughed out loud. "Come on, Erica. This isn't a Hallmark movie." "I'm serious," I replied, my hands clenched beneath the table. I've never felt more certain of anything. Janet inhaled deeply and narrowed her eyes. "You're a Hill. Do you understand what marrying someone like that will do to your name? To your future?" "It won't do anything but make me happy," I answered. She shook her head slowly. "You deserve better." That sentence. That same sentence I'd heard my whole life. Better. According to her standards. "Maybe your version of better isn't what I want," I said. They didn't offer congratulations. There were no toasts. No warmth. Just a cold, crushing wall of disapproval and silence. As I left that night, Ryan was waiting for me outside in his truck. I slid into the passenger seat, and he glanced over at me. "How bad?" he asked softly. I didn't answer right away. I just reached for his hand and whispered, "We'll still have our wedding. But just know it won't be pretty." He gave a sad smile. "As long as I'm looking at you at the end of that aisle, I don't care." The morning of our wedding dawned cloudy and cold, but my heart beat with something warmer than the sun could ever offer. Hope. Not hope that my family would suddenly accept my choice, but hope that I could still have a beautiful day despite them. Ryan and I had planned everything ourselves. It wasn't glamorous, but it was heartfelt. A modest chapel, white lilacs and eucalyptus on the altar, simple hand-lettered signs. We chose St. Grace's Church in an older part of Brookville, quiet, historic, and full of character. Like us. My gown wasn't designer, but it was perfect. Lace sleeves, a flowing skirt, and a delicate silver belt. It reminded me of something from an old romantic novel, timeless, unpretentious. Martha, Ryan's mother, helped me get ready in the small dressing room beside the chapel. She buttoned the back of my dress and gently smoothed my hair. "You're glowing," she whispered. "I'm nervous," I admitted. She smiled. "That's how you know it matters." Guests began to arrive, mostly from Ryan's side, friends from past jobs, some of my coworkers from the library, and Martha and Joseph's neighbors. My side was significantly smaller. My father arrived stiffly in a dark overcoat, nodding silently at everyone. Mira came in late, her entrance deliberately dramatic, trailing a perfume cloud and wearing a glittering champagne-colored gown that upstaged the bridesmaids. Janet arrived last, in a tailored navy dress and an expression that looked more like she was attending a courtroom hearing than her daughter's wedding. Still, I held it together. And then Ryan. When the doors opened and I saw him waiting at the altar, in a charcoal gray suit, eyes soft and steady, I felt safe. The music played. I walked slowly, my heart pounding, and as I reached him, he took my hand and whispered, "You look like forever." Our vows were personal. Ryan promised not just to love me, but to respect the life I had built. I vowed to protect our peace no matter what noise surrounded us. It was raw, real, and unpolished like us. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, cheers echoed in the room. Everyone stood. Everyone except my parents and Mira. The reception was held in the small hall behind the chapel. Wooden beams, tea lights, and wildflowers filled the room with charm. We had just begun the toasts when the MC called out, "Now a few words from the mother of the bride." My stomach sank. Janet stood slowly, lifting her champagne flute. "Thank you all for being here on my daughter's big day," she said with practiced poise. Erica has always done things her way, never quite fitting the mold, always chasing something simpler, smaller. I never thought I'd be here today, watching her marry a plumber. She forced a laugh. "No offense, Ryan." I stood, my voice firm. "Stop." Gasps rippled through the room. Ryan's hand squeezed mine. "This is my wedding," I said. "And I won't let you humiliate the man I love." Janet's eyes narrowed. "You are embarrassing yourself."
No.
"You are," I said. "Your obsession with image, with titles, it's poison. You've tried to shrink me my whole life, and I'm done letting you." There was a beat of silence, heavy and tense. Then crack. Janet's hand flew through the air and slapped me across the face, so hard it spun me sideways. Before I could react, her hand grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanked it hard, and she dragged me across the floor, through spilled champagne and crushed flower petals. Gasps turned to screams. Chairs clattered. Ryan lunged forward, grabbing me from her grasp. "Get away from her," he shouted. The room was chaos. My father looked frozen. Mira looked horrified. And then Martha's voice cut through it all. "Someone call the police, now." Within minutes, the sirens arrived. Officer Grant and his team pushed through the stunned guests. Witnesses pointed. The staff gave statements. I stood beside Ryan, my cheek burning, my scalp aching, but my voice steady. "I want to press charges," I said. Janet was arrested on the spot. No apology. No excuses. Just handcuffs and silence. The following weeks felt like a slow, grinding wave of reckoning. The bruises on my cheek had faded, but the sting of humiliation, the weight of betrayal, and the memory of my mother's hands in my hair remained. I'd never felt so stripped bare in public before. Yet, strangely, I also had never felt so free. The case against Janet Hill moved swiftly. The evidence was overwhelming. Security camera footage from the venue, multiple eyewitness testimonies, and photos of my injuries taken by paramedics on the scene. My lawyer, a calm and confident woman named Ava Reynolds, assured me that we had an airtight case. "It's open and shut," she said during our first meeting, "but it's still going to hurt. You need to be ready for that." The day of the trial, the courthouse lobby smelled like lemon polish and nerves. Ryan never left my side. Martha and Joseph sat behind us in the courtroom, offering quiet support. Across the aisle sat my father, Mira, and Jake, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. And then there was Janet, dressed in a perfectly tailored cream suit, lips painted crimson, her gaze cold as ever. She showed no remorse. Not when the footage played. Not when the witnesses recounted her dragging me across the floor. Not even when I took the stand and said the words I never thought I'd have to say. She always cared more about control than love, I told the court. She didn't just slap me. She tried to drag me back into the cage I escaped from. But I'm done living in fear. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts of public assault and battery, Janet didn't flinch. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in county jail, a $5,000 fine, and mandatory anger management counseling. She was denied early release due to lack of remorse and repeated displays of coercive, aggressive behavior. As the bailiff escorted her out, she looked back at me, not with sadness, not even with hatred, but with something that resembled disbelief. Like she still didn't understand how she lost control over me. But I wasn't hers to control anymore. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to rush us for a statement. Ryan shielded me with his arm, guiding me to the car. Once we were safely inside, he reached for my hand. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground. Not just with words, but with action. The pain was real, but so was the healing. Later that night, we sat in the backyard of our small apartment, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea beneath the stars. "I never imagined my wedding would end with my mother in handcuffs," I murmured. Ryan kissed the top of my head. I didn't imagine it either. But I knew one thing that day. "What?" "That you were braver than all of them combined." I smiled into his chest, letting the rhythm of his heartbeat calm the noise still echoing in my mind. The war was over. But something else, something better, was just beginning. A few weeks after the trial, on a calm Sunday morning, Ryan leaned against the kitchen doorway while I sipped coffee in my robe. He had this look on his face, like something was bubbling beneath the surface. I tilted my head. "What?" "I want to take you somewhere today," he said. "Where?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He smiled. "You'll see. Wear something comfortable, but nice." 2 hours later, we were driving through the outer hills of Brookville, far from the neighborhood we lived in. The roads curved through green estates, private gates, and long tree-lined driveways. I looked out the window, confused. I didn't even know Brookville had homes like this. Ryan said nothing. He just kept driving until we pulled up to an elegant white stone mansion surrounded by rose gardens and a circular cobblestone driveway. My jaw dropped. "You know someone who lives here?" I asked carefully. He turned off the engine. "Yeah, I do." We stepped out, and before I could ask another question, the front door opened. Martha and Joseph Carter, Ryan's parents, stood smiling on the grand porch. "Welcome home," Martha said warmly. I blinked. I'm sorry, what?" Ryan took my hand. "Erica, this is the house I grew up in." We walked inside, and I was immediately hit by a wave of warmth and elegance. High ceilings, oil paintings, fresh-cut flowers, and a fireplace that filled the foyer with the scent of cedar. This wasn't new wealth. This was generational. In the living room, I spotted a framed photo. Ryan in a black cap and gown, shaking hands with someone on a stage. The university seal behind them read Harvard Business School. I turned to him slowly. "Harvard. Dual MBA," he said gently. "Finance and infrastructure. I graduated with honors." I stood in the middle of that mansion, surrounded by a life I never knew existed. "You're not just a plumber," I said, half laughing, half stunned. He chuckled. "Technically, I was. For 2 years. It's a family tradition. My father made me start in the field, pipe work, job sites, blueprints, before taking on a leadership role." He led me down the hallway to a home office, sleek and modern. The door had a small, engraved nameplate that read, "Thomas Ryan Carter, CEO Designate. Carter Infrastructure Corporation." I froze. "You're the heir to Carter Infrastructure," I whispered. "One of the largest private infrastructure firms on the East Coast," Joseph added proudly as he entered. "And as of next month, Ryan will officially take over." "But why didn't you tell me any of this?" I asked, still dizzy. Ryan stepped forward and gently cupped my face. "Because I needed to know you saw me, not the title, not the money, just me." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't look away. "And I did," I said softly. He smiled. "That's why this is real." That evening, we dined with his parents in a grand dining room lit by a soft chandelier. We didn't talk about courtrooms or my family or Janet. We talked about dreams, about a future that didn't involve defending ourselves, only building something better. You loved me when I was just a guy with a wrench and a book in his truck, he whispered that night as we stood under the stars on the back patio. That's all I needed to know. And now I understood why. Because the strongest foundations aren't built on image. They're built on truth. 1 year later, I stood barefoot in the backyard of the Carter estate, the same lawn where I once felt like a stranger to a world I hadn't known existed. The grass was warm beneath my feet, and the late afternoon sun painted the sky in hues of soft orange and gold. The scent of freshly baked lemon bread wafted through the open kitchen windows. Laughter floated from somewhere behind me. Emma, our daughter, ran across the yard chasing butterflies, her little curls bouncing with every step. She had Ryan's dimples and my eyes. She was the best part of our story. The months after Janet's sentencing had brought peace and purpose. Ryan officially became CEO of Carter Infrastructure, and under his leadership, the company launched its first community initiative, building libraries and learning centers in underserved areas. It was his idea, but he credited it to me. "You brought stories into my life," he said. "It's time I help bring them into others." That gesture became my calling. I left the public library, though not out of resentment. I left because something bigger was calling. I now directed a nonprofit arm of Carter Infrastructure called Turning Pages, which provided books, training, and reading resources to schools across the region. I spent my days designing reading programs, speaking at events, and more than anything, helping children discover the same comfort in stories that once saved me. Ryan never missed a dinner. No matter how many boardrooms he sat in, he came home to read Emma bedtime stories with funny voices and exaggerated faces. Every evening, I watched the man the world now respected as a visionary CEO transform into a gentle, patient father who let his daughter tie ribbons in his hair without blinking. My relationship with Thomas, my father, changed too. Quietly at first, he began checking in, asking about Emma, about work. He once wrote a short email that simply said, "You are right to choose love over image." I see that now. It wasn't a grand apology, but it felt honest. I accepted it. Mira, on the other hand, was a different story. After Jake's company collapsed from a string of risky investments, they sold their penthouse and moved into a more modest home outside the city. For the first time in her life, Mira had to face the world without luxury as a shield. And slowly, awkwardly, she began reaching out. It started with baby gifts, then offers to babysit, then quiet cups of tea where she said things like, "I think I never really knew you before." I never let her off the hook for what she said at my wedding, but I didn't close the door either. Growth is messy, but it's real. As for Janet, I never saw her again. She served her sentence. Moved to another state, I heard. Her number remains blocked on my phone, and I never looked back. Some chapters aren't meant to be reopened. They belong on a shelf, closed, quiet, done. That spring afternoon, as Emma plopped into my lap, holding a crumpled dandelion, Ryan came over from the patio with 2 glasses of iced tea. He sat beside me and kissed my temple. "She's going to change the world," he whispered, watching Emma. "Only if we let her choose who she wants to be," I replied. He nodded. "That's what we'll do. Always." Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, built from honesty, from hard choices, from standing tall even when the ground shook. Looking back, I often think about that slap at my wedding, the moment everything fell apart. But in truth, it was the moment everything truly began. Because from there, I stopped pretending. I stopped shrinking. I started living for me. And the man beside me? He loved me before the world knew who I was. Just like I loved him before I knew who he was. That's not a fairy tale. That's real. That's enough. Thank you so much for watching this emotional and powerful story. If this journey touched your heart, made you think, or gave you the strength to stand for yourself, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment below. Your thoughts and feedback mean the world to us. Do you believe love can rise above judgment? Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? Share your story. We read every comment. And if you enjoy stories like this, filled with real emotions, justice, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new upload. New episodes are released regularly, and each one is inspired by the strength and courage of people just like you. Until next time, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you deserve a life built on love, not approval.